Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this little discussion about how AA Productions constantly own the so-called AAA industry, a video that I really wanted to make for quite a while now. Especially PC gamers have lately been blessed with a steady decline in game quality from the big studios and publishers with huge budgets and long development times, also known as AAA productions. We have also been politely asked by those publishers to support this dwindling industry with a humble donation of $70 so the poor CEOs can afford their next mansion. And for our money, we get 15 to 20 hour long games like Forespoken and Redfall that, despite all the other issues, are riddled with bugs and full of technical flaws. On the other hand, we have so-called AA studios like Rockfish Games or The Bearded Ladies, which both have around 25 employees that are able to release 30 to 50 hour long games for around $50. And those companies are able to deliver games in a decent state with only some minor bugs or glitches at day one. And despite all this, you can still find comments on the discussion board of Everspace 2 on Steam where people state things like $50 for a AA game? No way, what a ripoff. People still believe that the size or brand name of a developer/publisher alone is worth more money, despite the fact that we are constantly getting a kick in the butt from those companies. I want to take a deeper look how AA Productions, and I will take Everspace 2 and Miasma Chronicles as reference points here, compared to AAA failures like Forespoken and Redfall. And while we all already know about the difference in technical polish or game length, I want to take a deeper look why those games own those AAA productions on a gameplay and game design level, which I think is far more interesting. I will try to focus on the positive sides, what makes those AA productions shine, rather than just constantly complaining about how bad the other games are. You know, the channel name was chosen deliberately to stay more on the positive side of things. But before we analyze those elements, let's have a brief look at some common misconceptions about games from smaller studios. Those games are often disregarded as they cannot look as good and they offer less value than bigger productions. Everspace 2 and Miasma Chronicles are two excellent examples how that is simply not true. Both games from two vastly different genres feature stunning visuals with state-of-the-art options to adjust the quality to your hardware, and they do so without melting your GPU, are for the most part properly optimized on release, while also getting constant updates and patches to further improve in this department. And while pure game time doesn't equal value, those two games range from 30 to 50 hours for a playthrough, depending on your play style. Forespoken and Redfall will take 15 to 20 hours to complete. And what is even more embarrassing for those productions is the way this game time is filled. As I said, time spent doesn't equal value, but on top of offering more content, this content is also less bloated, more focused and respects your time much more than the shorter games. This is a double knockout right here. More and higher value content for $20 less, created by a vastly smaller team. Why do I say the content is of better quality? Well, let's take a look how Everspace 2 and Miasma Chronicles achieve this in my opinion. While the Bearded Ladies from Miasma Chronicles work with a small publisher, 505 Studios, Rockfish Games publishes their game by themselves. This gives those studios more freedom to execute a much more focused vision of their games. They have to deal with a lot less interference and don't have to design their games around crap features like microtransaction stores or add game features just for the sake of appealing to more people, as if every game has to be a jack of all trades, which often leads to a very watered down, a bit of everything game. One important quality feature for me is respecting the player's time. It is not easy to find the right balance that progress in a game feels like I earned something by putting effort into it, opposed to just artificial prolonged processes for the sake of engagement. Big productions often do this to sell their time-saving crap for real money in their stores. Like, okay, we have this finely tuned and balanced gameplay loop, now slow this down by factor X and sell something that enables players to re-enable the original balanced experience. Imagine paying for a movie that plays in slow motion and then offer premium tickets to watch the movie at the original pace. Although Avatar 2 already felt like slow motion at its normal pace, but I digress. So Everspace 2 is a space looter shooter with RPG elements and character progression. It also has a crafting system, which requires you to collect materials to craft or enhance ship equipment. All of these progression layers need to feel like I earned something for the time I invest into them. If the reward sucks, or it takes far too long, or things get too repetitive and boring, it will become a very unsatisfying experience. But I also cannot just hand out things with no effort attached. We have a saying in Germany: geschenkt ist nichts wert. Literally translated, gifted is worth nothing. Means you don't respect things you have not put some effort into or committed something by yourself to earn them. You feel attached to things you earned much more than to things you received for free. In Everspace 2 you can collect most of the crafting materials just by naturally exploring the areas. You hardly need to really grind for something, with the exception for the final unlock of the legendary ship quality, and that was also done after maybe 2 hours, which is fair for the final ship tier in my opinion. Especially a looter shooter can become very grindy and boring if you just farm the same things over and over to get what you want. While Everspace 2 is not perfect and it lacks some optimization and recalibration features for the endgame loot, overall it is decently balanced without dragging things out too much. Miasma Chronicles feels the same way. Currency, skill points and new and better gear come at the right pace. The systems match your overall story and enemy progression. Every upgrade feels good and meaningful for a decent amount of effort and time invested. This seems to become a standout feature for AA games, where developers care for the player experience to deliver a satisfying product, trying to sell more units by delivering quality products, instead cashing in on brand names and following trends like live service games because some few companies manage to make insane amounts of money with it. The mindset trying to develop the next big thing like World of Warcraft or Destiny to maximize revenue for the shareholders and CEOs versus the mindset of delivering quality products to build your brand and find your niche in a competitive market. You get the feeling that Rockfish Games or the Bearded Ladies carefully consider their customers' values to satisfy those, which directly leads to a better balanced product that respects your time. Now I know that these companies also try to make money and do not develop games for the pure reason to entertain us, but I think you get what I'm saying here. In summary, smaller studios carefully consider their customer needs and think a lot more from a gamer's perspective to balance time-related systems. The other big feature that shines for me in those smaller productions is the more focused vision and execution of gameplay systems, without trying to add filler systems, unnecessary fluff, trying to cater to everyone and keeping things approachable for everyone. Miasma Chronicles certainly belongs in the turn-based combat or CRPG niche, but it is one of the most approachable games for people who are not into that kind of games, while also offering a real challenge for the experts of this genre. I already talked a little about this in my first overview and beginner's guide, check it out if you want. The whole game is much more digestible than, say, Wasteland 3 or Divinity Original Sin. The story is interesting, but you are not forced to read or listen to tons of stories to keep track what feels like 100 things going on at the same time. The character progression systems offering different tactical approaches, but I don't have to watch 3 guides just to understand the basics. It is a perfect example how to distill the essentials and keep things focused. There has also been put a lot of effort into balancing the difficulties, and Redfall has shown how bad a game becomes that is not able to do that. For someone new to the genre, the easiest difficulty and the tactical light setting in Miasma Chronicles will still provide some challenges, but is forgiving enough to let you make mistakes, while the hardest setting will give veterans an unforgiving and hard time, just what those people want. And you don't receive any penalties for lowering the difficulty. Everspace 2 also provides you with 6 difficulty settings that don't come with any penalties for the players. You will get the same loot, money and experience, with the one exception of legendary drops on Nightmare difficulty, but those can also be obtained through other means, so they are not locked behind that setting. This highly respects players' choice to experience the game just the way they enjoy it the most. Those settings can also be changed during a game, no need to stick to one difficulty setting for the whole time. Imagine Redfall would have a proper difficulty and enemy AI, something you would expect if they charge you $70, right? And while I do not particularly like Everspace 2's puzzles or racetracks and would certainly enjoy more features like I described in my endgame video, I rather take a firmly executed and focused vision of a game than those bloated messes which try to cater to very different groups of players at the same time. Miasma Chronicles and Everspace 2 invested a lot of effort to keep their games approachable for everyone without trying to make a game for everyone, and staying firmly on track executing the games they have envisioned. The quality of those games speaks volumes. How your limited resources in manpower, time and money force you to focus on core gameplay elements and make them shine, rather than waste your time on systems or features you are simply not able to offer on a competitive level. And by the way, the static story cutscenes from Everspace 2 and voice acting is light years ahead of Redfall's take on that. Also, I can easily accept that a 25 people team that charges me $50 cannot provide any expensive CGI cutscenes. Still, I can hardly believe how bad Redfall's storytelling with a similar art style than Everspace 2 was. To wrap this point up, the more distilled and focused execution of fewer or less bloated gameplay systems delivers a far sharper knife than the knife that also wants to be a fork and a shovel at the same time. The point I want to make here is that even if we completely ignore the technical state of the games and the overall amount of content available, even then Redfall and Forespoken wouldn't stand a chance against Everspace 2 or Miasma Chronicles. The multitude of core problems of these AAA games are inherently baked into the gameplay systems that no patch can solve. And it is somewhat mind-blowing that those smaller teams with a firm vision and tight execution deliver a quality level that is so much better than what the big players are trying to feed us. It really feels like the AA-Productions evolve around the questions: what do players want and what could be a great game, rather than a lukewarm attempt to cash in on trends or copy what has at some point worked before, while also shoving 1,000 different ideas mindlessly into a blender. On top of that all, they also fail to deliver on a technical acceptable level, and that it is not in general hard or impossible to optimize games for PC while also delivering stunning visuals is perfectly demonstrated by these two AA productions. If the big players want to charge us $70 for their games, they have to return to the basics and ask themselves around what premise are we designing our games? Maximum profit? Chasing trends? Copying other games? Or maybe, just maybe, ask yourself, what makes a good game? What do players enjoy most? And then try to achieve quality products with a focused vision that respects the player's time. Because in the end, you want our money, and small, flexible studios like the Bearded Ladies and Rockfish Games are right now running circles around you, and I rather spend my hard-earned cash there. What do you think sets games from smaller studios apart, and what examples for that do you have? Let us know down below in the comments. For now, this is all I have to share about this topic. Thank you very much for watching until the end. Take good care of yourself and enjoy your time spent in the video games you like the most.